Hello and welcome, this is Wakusama, and let's look at how to move from the sketch of your composition to a clean line art of your composition using layers. For the purpose of this video, I'll be using Adobe Photoshop, but I believe you could achieve the same using your favorite drawing software. So whether you have Krita, whether you have Clip, Studio Paint, anything that you are using and comfortable with, you could achieve the same result. So join me as I walk you around what I get to do. I have my sketch that looks like this. If you look closely, you will see a boy running, and this boy is chasing something. And then we have houses, and then we have some buildings towards to the far end of our composition. So what I want us to do is to come up with a clean line art. And in this clean line art, I want us to separate the three elements, which is the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. So by separating, I mean I want them on different layers. So we'll draw the boy and the cup on a separate layer. We will draw the houses that as you can see them, in another separate layer, and then we'll do the houses on another separate layer. Also, I'll have bonus tips for you. Quick workflow, especially for duplicating bits. Alright, let's begin by reducing our opacity of the sketch. Reduce to a number that you're comfortable working with. So mine is at 23. And let's add a new layer for our foreground. So you could add a new layer. You could name it already as foreground. Foreground. Then pick your brush tool. You may need to adjust some settings. So mine, I've adjusted pressure sensitivity to none, smoothing to 80%, so that I have smooth curves. I've adjusted my brush size, so now I'm comfortable working with these particular settings. Let's move to beginning, and by adding, you have your foreground layer, so you begin by sketching, not sketching, but drawing over the items or the elements in your foreground. Also, if you want to practice with this specific sketch, I will leave a link in the description where you can download it, then use it alongside with me in this tutorial. So here you go with the foreground. You have now your foreground done. Let's move on to the middle ground and do the houses. And for these houses, we'll need to have a guide for straight lines, because now our sketch is crooked. Now we need something that guides us into making them a bit better. So what do we use? You have two options. One is by using grid. By grid, you go to view and show, and then grid. Once you select that, you'll have your grid set up like that. Another way will be to, which I will use today, turn off the grid, turn off the grid. Another way now will be to add a new layer and do your lines using your brush. So I'll set out my lines like this. I have several of them. Set them up. So this is for the top of my roof, for the bottom of my roof, top, bottom. I have this line that connects the door and the window. So my window will start somewhere there. My door will end somewhere here. What else do I want? This wall should come somewhere there. There's another a small canopy kind of thing, and then another door here. For my windows, I want to do a thicker stroke. Also, this is my own way of doing things. You might be better off using a grid. Set out my windows. Let me decide the size and the grids. I have it that way. Another window here. Make it this way. Let me have another window. Very simple window here. So now I have this, and then I'll need a fence. Let me use same thickness for a fence, and it is on this fence that I will show you how to duplicate and make your workflow even smoother and faster. So I have that. So we begin by the houses and the ground, the middle ground. So the houses and all this thing that looks like grass. Same procedure applies. Same procedure applies. Let me see. You reduce the opacity on this, all these adjustments, so you have a better vision of what you're doing. Let's reduce our brush size to where it was. I was working with 9. You could go back to working with what you had. Also, if you're wondering how I'm doing the straight lines in all the different directions and you don't know how to do that in Photoshop, you may want to check out one of my videos that talks about straight lines in Photoshop. If you already know, let's proceed. I guess we'll need to draw these curves first, so let's lay them out. Quick tip, Control Z on your keyboard and that's your last action. So now this is how we get done with our middle ground, and that includes the houses and the ground. We can turn off this other layer that we used to adjust the windows and the lines. And now the next step is to do the fence and the other building. So we'll have 2 more layers. So 1 layer for our fence, and on this fence we will use duplication to make our workflows faster or quicker, and then we'll move on to the far background and make simple shapes to illustrate our buildings. So turn off this layer and let's move on to the fence. So this fence has 2 lines. You have the one running vertically, and then you have the other ones. Let's add a new layer for this one and then draw it quick and easy. Color it with white and then duplicate it on your keyboard. Ctrl J, drag it down. So now you have the 2. Merge, select them by holding down Shift and selecting on the first one and selecting on the next one. Release Shift, right click, select merge layers. Move on to another layer and let's now do one of these. You could use the rectangle tool if you prefer. You don't prefer drawing, you could use the rectangle tool, and then make sure your stroke size is the same size as your brush size. Color that in, and then use the same idea of Ctrl J to duplicate this, move it around, Ctrl J, move it over. When you see the double arrowed line, it means that the spacing between these two objects is the same. So when you see the arrow, release it, continue and so on and so forth until you have your fence done. And then you can select all of these that represent the fence to make them one layer. So select all of them and then right click, merge layers, and then this should be your fence. This should be a fence. You could change this color later on in our composition, the process of drawing or coloring. So what is now left is the buildings, and for this we'll draw very simple shapes. We do not need to go all the way down, as we have some elements in the foreground that are hiding these buildings. So we only need to draw the part that the eye perceives. So for instance, these two will end somewhere here because we already have a house, and you're free to go back and turn on this layer so you are able to see where your house ends. My house ends here. So let me draw another building. Make sure you're drawing on the right layer. I do not need to draw anything else here, but I could draw something somewhere here. And then you'll notice that this one now moves a bit lower because our middle ground ends somewhere here, so I'll need my line lower than that, so it is well hidden. Also make sure that you're drawing on the correct layer. So you have buildings like this. Let's use the same idea of duplication and now add a new layer and draw a simple rectangle. Ctrl J and move it over. Ctrl J, move it over. Ctrl J, move it over. Ctrl J, move it over. Then you can select all of this, layer 14. And then merge layers, Ctrl J again, now to duplicate everything else, move it down in that manner. So now you have your windows. You do not need to go all the way down, as we have again this element in our foreground hiding everything else. So we all need to draw the part that is essential for the eye to see and read that this is a building. So I want you to continue Ctrl J but then move it over to the next building. Ctrl T for transform, then you could reduce one of the, the dimension, so that it is not the exact same design as this one. So these ones are a bit smaller. Also we will not move all the way to the left because now we have a tree hiding the other side of the windows. So this is done like that. Let's move. Pick a rectangle tool, fill it with black, 0 stroke, and draw a very thin window. Let's make this a little different. Rasterize, and then Ctrl J, Ctrl J, Ctrl J, Ctrl J, Ctrl J for duplication. Look for where you began your rectangle. This is rectangle 1. Select everything, merge layers. So now you have it as one layer. Ctrl J that layer, move it down. Ctrl J, move it down, let me see, Control J, move it down. Just move it down to where it is necessary. And I guess this one will have to move all the way because the thing that is in front of it is only a fence and you can see through the fence. So let's move it all the way down. So we have it that way. What else can we do? I think we could leave the rest of the other buildings to be without windows to add variety. So now we want to merge everything that is in the far background, so we have all these other rectangles as one unit. So the simplest way to find it out is by going to just checking and closing. I believe this is it. So now I select everything and choose merge layers. Now when I merge layers, I end up with a layer that has everything that I want. So this is simply how we do it. Let's see what we've got finally. Let's turn off unnecessary layers. Let's turn off the sketch. And now let's see what we have. We have these buildings. You could rename them to buildings for the sake of the steps that follow. You could rename this to fence. You could rename this to middle ground and turn up the opacity. Middle ground. And this one, we had a foreground. We have already named it as foreground. So we have foreground, and then we have the middle ground following, and then you have the fence next, and then you have the buildings. So everything right now looks chaotic. Everything looks chaotic if you had to have them all together on the same plane, and this is because the layers are transparent and you can only see the blacks. So the whites, it's all transparent that we can see through, and these will be fixed in the next stage, and that is coloring. So for now, this is what we achieve for our clean line art. And just let's look at it, everything. So I have the foreground, looks like that. Turn it off, and the middle ground has the two houses and the tree. We have the fence, very small, and then we have the other buildings. So thank you for your time, and if this video has been helpful, please consider subscribing, also share, comment, like, and I will see you in the next one.